Hello there. Hello, Dinah and Mary and Amy. You were the first ones up today. I'm so glad for your company. And welcome everyone to another Fireside Reading, where we are going to continue with Siddhartha. We're on the fifth reading today, since we started at the beginning of the week. And we're going to read the first half of chapter 5, which is called Kamala. And this is the second part of the book. So there is a dedication at the beginning to the second part, dedicated to Wilhelm Gundert, my cousin in Japan, says Hermann Hesse. All right, let's find out what happens in this chapter. And then we're going to have the weekend off, and we'll be back on Monday for the second half of this chapter. Welcome to a fireside reading of Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. We're reading the second part of the book now, which is dedicated to Wilhelm Gundert, my cousin in Japan. Chapter 5, Kamala. Siddhartha learned something new on every step of his path, for the world was transformed, and his heart was enchanted. He saw the sun rising over the mountains with their forests, and setting over the distant beach with its palm trees. At night he saw the stars in the sky in their fixed positions, and the crescent of the moon floating like a boat in the blue. He saw trees, stars, animals, clouds, rainbows, rocks, herbs, flowers, stream and river, the glistening dew in the bushes in the morning, distant high mountains which were blue and pale, birds sang and bees, wind silverishly blew through the rice field. All of this, 1,000-fold and colourful, had always been there. Always the sun and the moon had shone, always rivers had roared and bees had buzzed, but in former times all of this had been nothing more to Siddhartha than a fleeting, deceptive veil before his eyes, looked upon in distrust, destined to be penetrated and destroyed by thought, since it was not the essential existence, since this essence lay beyond, on the other side of the visible. But now his liberated eyes stayed on this side. He saw and became aware of the visible, sought to be at home in this world, did not search for the true essence, did not aim at a world beyond. Beautiful was this world, looking at it thus, without searching, thus, simply, thus, childlike. Beautiful were the moon and the stars. Beautiful was the stream and the banks, the forest and the rocks, the goat and the gold beetle, the flower and the butterfly. Beautiful and lovely it was, thus to walk through the world, thus childlike, thus awoken, thus open to what is near, thus without distrust. Differently the sun burnt the head, differently the shade of the forest cooled him down, differently the stream and the cistern, the pumpkin and the banana tasted. Short were the days, short the nights. Every hour sped swiftly away like a sail on the sea, and under the sail was a ship full of treasures, full of joy. Siddhartha saw a group of apes moving through the high canopy of the forest, high in the branches, and heard their savage, greedy song. Siddhartha saw a male sheep following a female one and mating with her. In a lake of reeds he saw the pike hungrily hunting for its dinner, propelling themselves away from it in fear, wiggling and sparkling. The young fish jumped in droves out of the water. The scent of strength and passion came forcefully out of the hasty eddies of the water, which the pike stirred up, impetuously hunting. All of this had always existed, and he had not seen it. He had not been with it. Now he was with it, he was part of it. Light and shadow ran through his eyes. Stars and moon ran through his heart. On the way, Siddhartha also remembered everything he had experienced in the garden Jetavana, the teaching he had heard there, the divine Buddha, the farewell from Govinda, the conversation with the Exalted One. Again he remembered his own words. He had spoken to the Exalted One, every word, and with astonishment he became aware of the fact that there he had said things which he had not really known yet at the time. What he had said to Gautama, the Buddha's treasure and secret, was not the teachings, not the unexpressible and not teachable, which he had experienced in the hour of his enlightenment. It was nothing but this very thing which he had now gone to experience, what he now began to experience. Now he had to experience his self. It is true that he had already known for a long time that his self was Atman, in its essence bearing the same eternal characteristics as Brahman. But never he had really found this self, because he had wanted to capture it in the net of thought. With the body definitely not being the self, and not the spectacle of the senses, so it also was not the thought, not the rational mind, not the learned wisdom, not the learned ability to draw conclusions and to develop previous thoughts into new ones. No, this world of thought was also still on this side, and nothing could be achieved by killing the random self of the senses, if the random self of thoughts and learned knowledge was fattened on the other hand. Both the thoughts as well as the senses were pretty things. The ultimate meaning was hidden behind both of them. Both had to be listened to, both had to be played with, both neither had to be scorned nor overestimated. From both, the secret voices of the innermost truth had to be attentively perceived. He wanted to strive for nothing except for what the voice commanded him to strive for, dwell on nothing except where the voice would advise him to do so. Why had Gautama, at that time, in the hour of all hours, sat down under the bo tree, where the enlightenment hit him? He had heard a voice in his own heart, which had commanded him to seek rest under this tree, and he had neither preferred self-castigation, offerings, ablutions, nor prayer, neither food nor drink, neither sleep nor dream. He had obeyed the voice. To obey like this, not to an external command, only to the voice, to be ready like this was good, this was necessary. Nothing else was necessary. In the night, when he slept in the straw hut of a ferryman by the river, Siddhartha had a dream. Govinda was standing in front of him, dressed in the yellow robe of an ascetic. Sad was how Govinda looked like. Sadly he asked, "Why have you forsaken me?" At this he embraced Govinda, wrapped his arms around him, and as he was pulling him close to his chest and kissed him, it was not Govinda any more, but a woman, and a full breast popped out of the woman's dress, at which Siddhartha lay and drank sweetly and strongly, tasted the milk from the breast. It tasted of woman and man, of sun and forest, of animal and flower, of every fruit, of every joyful desire. It intoxicated him and rendered him unconscious. When Siddhartha woke up, the pale river shimmered through the door of the hut, and in the forest a dark call of an owl resounded deeply and pleasantly. When the day began, Siddhartha asked his host, the ferryman, to get him across the river. The ferryman got him across the river on his bamboo raft. The wide water shimmered reddishly in the light of the morning. "This is a beautiful river," he said to his companion. "Yes," said the riverman, "a very beautiful river. I love it more than anything. Often I have listened to it. Often I have looked into its eyes, and always I have learned from it. Much can be learned from a river." "I thank you, my benefactor," spoke Siddhartha, disembarking on the other side of the river. "I have no gift I could give you for your hospitality, my dear, and also no payment for your work. I am a man without a home, a son of a Brahmin and a Samana." "I did see it," spoke the ferryman, "and I haven't expected any payment from you, and no gift which would be the custom for guests to bear. You will give me the gift another time." "Do you think so?" asked Siddhartha amusedly. "Surely this too I have learned from the river. Everything is coming back. You too, Samana, will come back. Now, farewell. Let your friendship be my reward. Commemorate me when you make offerings to the gods." Smiling, they parted. Smiling, Siddhartha was happy about the friendship and the kindness of the ferryman. "He is like Govinda," he thought with a smile. "All I meet on my path are like Govinda. All are thankful, though they are the ones who would have a right to receive thanks. All are submissive. All would like to be friends, like to obey, think little. Like children are all people." At about noon he came through a village. In front of the mud cottages, children were rolling about in the street, were playing with pumpkin seeds and seashells, screamed and wrestled, but they all timidly fled from the unknown Samana. In the end of the village the path led through a stream, and by the side of the stream a young woman was kneeling and washing clothes. When Siddhartha greeted her, she lifted her head and looked up to him with a smile, so that he saw the white in her eyes glistening. He called out a blessing to her, as it is the custom among travellers, and asked how far he still had to go to reach the large city. Then she got up and came to him. Beautifully, her wet mouth was shimmering in her young face. She exchanged humorous banter with him, asked whether he had eaten already, and whether it was true that the Samanas slept alone in the forest at night, and were not allowed to have any women with them. While talking, she put her left foot on his right one, and made a movement as a woman does, who would want to initiate that kind of sexual pleasure with a man which the textbooks call climbing a tree. Siddhartha felt his blood heating up, and since in this moment he had to think of his dream again, he bent slightly down to the woman and kissed with his lips the brown breast. Looking up, he saw her face, smiling, full of lust, and her eyes, with contracted pupils, begging with desire. Siddhartha also felt desire, and felt the source of his sexuality moving. But since he had never touched a woman before, he hesitated for a moment, while his hands were already prepared to reach out for her. And in this moment he heard, shuddering with awe, the voice of his innermost self, and this voice said, "No." Then all charms disappeared from the young woman's smiling face. He no longer saw anything else but the damp glance of a female animal in heat. Politely, he petted her cheek, turned away from her, and disappeared away from the disappointed woman with light steps into the bamboo wood. On this day he reached the large city before the evening, and was happy, for he felt the need to be among people. For a long time he had lived in the forests, and the straw hut of the ferryman in which he had slept that night had been the first roof for a long time he had had over his head. Before the city, in a beautifully fenced grove, the traveller came across a small group of servants, both female and men, carrying baskets. In their midst, carried by 4 servants in an ornamental sedan chair, sat a woman, the mistress, on red pillows under a colourful canopy. Siddhartha stopped at the entrance to the pleasure garden and watched the parade, saw the servants, the maids, the baskets, saw the sedan chair, and saw the lady in it. Under black hair, which made to tower high on her head, he saw a very fair, very delicate, very smart face, a brightly red mouth like a freshly cracked fig, eyebrows which were well tended and painted in a high arch, smart and watchful dark eyes, a clear, tall neck rising from a green and golden garment, resting fair hands, long and thin, with wide golden bracelets over the wrists. Siddhartha saw how beautiful she was, and his heart rejoiced. He bowed deeply when the sedan chair came closer, and straightening up again he looked at the fair, charming face, read for a moment in the smart eyes with the high arcs above, breathed in a slight fragrance he did not know. With a smile, the beautiful woman nodded for a moment and disappeared into the grove, and then the servants as well. "Thus I am entering this city," Siddhartha thought with a charming omen. He instantly felt drawn into the grove, but he thought about it, and only now he became aware of how the servants and maids had looked at him at the entrance, how despicable, how distrustful, how rejecting. "I am still a samana," he thought. "I am still an ascetic and beggar. I must not remain like this. I will not be able to enter the grove like this." And he laughed. The next person who came along his path, he asked about the grove and for the name of the woman, and was told that this was the grove of Kamala, the famous courtesan, and that aside from the grove she owned a house in the city. Then he entered the city. Now he had a goal. Pursuing his goal, he allowed the city to suck him in, drifted through the flow of the streets, stood still on the squares, rested on the stairs of stone by the river. When the evening came, he made friends with Barber's assistant, whom he had seen working in the shade of an arch in a building, whom he found again praying in a temple of Vishnu, whom he told about stories of Vishnu and the Lakshmi. Among the boats by the river he slept this night, and early in the morning, before the first customers came into his shop, he had the barber's assistant shave his beard and cut his hair, comb his hair and anoint it with fine oil. Then he went to take his bath in the river. When late in the afternoon beautiful Kamala approached her grove in her sedan chair, Siddhartha was standing at the entrance, made a bow, and received the courtesan's greeting. But that servant who walked at the very end of her train, he motioned to him and asked him to inform his mistress that a young Brahmin would wish to talk to her. After a while the servant returned, asked him who had been waiting to follow him, conducted him who was following him, without a word, into a pavilion where Kamala was lying on a couch, and left him alone with her. We're going to have to wait to find out what happens, and we'll do that on Monday next. So the weekend is off, but we will return for the very exciting second part of Chapter 5. I hope you're enjoying this book, and I am going to, I think we have about another 10 days of reading, so maybe 2 more weeks of reading. And as far as I can tell, we're good to go for the next couple of weeks. All right, have a lovely weekend, everybody. I will see you back here on Monday. Until then, everyone, do stay very, very well indeed.